highly secure, soundproof headquarters of the podcast. This is the Spurs Insider. We are back with a full complement of podcasters today. We have Express News sports editor Nick Talbot, beat writer Jeff McDonald, and back from the road, wearing tinted glasses, an all-star Chicago baseball cap, a Team USA sweater. We have the stylish, the incomparable
sweatshirt.
Sweatshirt.
Yes.
Okay. Tom Ringo Starr Osborne, looking very rock starish today.
He's back from the USSR.
Are you glad to be back, Tom Osborne?
Well, it was dangerously cold there, but yeah, I'm glad to be back. It's beautiful weather here in San Antonio.
Because you miss being on the podcast.
I do. I did.
Did we do two without him?
Yeah.
Boy, you missed out.
You have your typical salmon coffee cup
Yes.
with coffee today?
Yes.
We have
Yes.
Jeff's Polar Pop.
This is riveting.
Well,
Is this obscuring your lack of preparation for this thing?
We're struggling for topics, ladies and gentlemen, out there in podcast world here at the secure location. And by the way, don't try to find it. We've had people trying to find the secure location. Don't go to Google Maps. We're not on Google Maps. Just leave us to our podcasting in peace in our soundproof location. The problem is the last podcast we did was when Tom had jetted off to the cold north of Chicago for the All-Star break, and we talked a lot about how things were falling apart for the Spurs and they might not make the playoffs. And there have been 3 games since then, and the
Things are falling apart for the Spurs, and they might not make the playoffs.
The sentiment has not exactly changed a whole lot around this team, has it?
Yeah.
Until there's about 4 or 5 games left in the season, and when it's a fact they won't make the playoffs, I don't think anything's going to change.
Well,
but with Memphis still, skidding.
Let's
do
this. Why give people hope? Why give people hope?
It's not necessarily about providing hope. It's just it will remain a fact that they're not going to be eliminated from this race probably anytime soon.
Not mathematically.
I mean, even it's not like it's a 1% chance. I mean, they still have a shot, and I know this is going to devolve in another discussion about whether they should be trying for this or whether they shouldn't. Like, they're probably not going to end up with it, and again, that's not the worst thing in the world. Like, the consolation prize is a lottery pick. So you go for it, and then you probably don't get it, and then you get a lottery pick.
Sure, I just want people to understand that they're not going to make the playoffs.
Yeah, 538 has them at 35 wins now. That's finishing 12th in the West. And they have the Pelicans making the playoffs with 41 wins. That's the current projections from the think tank.
I mean, how do you see this team that we've watched all year going on a run?
It won't.
Right. Yeah.
The team, not that team we watched in the first quarter last night. That's
when they lost in Oklahoma City. I kind of threw in the flag there.
As you know,
I thought if they had won that, maybe they could get something going.
As you know, I called time of death when they lost in Chicago, which is like a month ago.
Right.
Yeah. Well, when I asked Jeff McDonald when he walked in here with his Polar Pop about what he wanted to talk about today, he first of all was belligerent and said that wasn't his job to come up with topics. Yeah. And second of all, kind of implied that I was doing a bad job as host for not having a topic on my own.
No, I didn't imply. Okay. I flat out said.
Okay. And third of all, he finally gave in and said, we need to talk about what's next. So what is next?
They play Orlando on Saturday.
You were the worst podcaster.
They need to decide who they're sending to the NBA lottery draft.
Yeah.
That's
who do you think they should send to the NBA lottery?
They haven't done that in 23 years, so they got to come with someone
You think
good.
Tim would go?
This is your topic.
This is my topic.
You said you want to talk about what's next. And if that's really what you wanted to talk about, is whether Tim would go represent the Spurs at the draft lottery, then go ahead and have that conversation.
I would rather talk about Ringo's haircut. Can we do that?
Ringo did get a haircut. Today, Ringo?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's why I was a tad late.
Yeah. Okay.
This one's really off.
He's not a long-haired Beatle anymore.
No. Okay, if we want to talk about what's next and we want to have a serious discussion that listeners of this podcast actually will care about and not turn off in the middle of the podcast, we can talk about whether or not Greg Popovich or the Spurs in general are doing themselves a disservice by continuing to try to win games. And you can just sigh at that, or you can actually try to offer something helpful.
You know, the loss last night to Dallas. I'll just throw this out here. You know, DeMar Derozan, such a pro, always fulfills. I'm not going to say obligation because it's not an obligation, but he always meets with us after a game, win or lose, whether he does well or poorly. But he looked crushed last night.
Yeah.
I've never seen him that down myself, and I just wonder. You know, what do you do? Like you said, what if you stop trying to win and you've got these proud veterans, DeMar, L.A., Rudy? You know, it's just a weird dynamic.
I think what is happening is the reality is setting in for just about everybody in
Yeah.
there. And DeMar exhibited that
Yeah.
in terms of the way he answered questions last night and in his demeanor.
Yeah.
I mean, they are understanding that this probably is not going to get better.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird that game of all the games did that to them because they actually played pretty well. They could have gotten blown away, and then they make an effort and finish reasonably strong.
It was kind of there in Oklahoma City, too, when he didn't have to talk. The
Right.
PR staff wanted to give him the night off, but, you know, true to form, he came over and talked to us. But he looked pretty down there, too. So
Okay, so reality is setting in among players, coaches, up and down the organization that if the playoff chase is still a possibility, it's not very likely. Like the more likely, I think everyone would acknowledge that it's more likely than not that they're not going to make the playoffs. The next, to get to Jeff's topic about what happens next, I think that there's a false choice that some people think the Spurs have, whether it's either you try to win games or you go for the lottery. I think it's not that black and white, and I've said this over and over and over in the newspaper, online, and in this secure location all season. Like, these things work themselves out naturally, and I would argue against the idea that the Spurs should try to lose games on purpose, because by trying to win games the rest of the season, they are harming their future. I just don't see that as a convincing argument, because even if they try to lose the rest of their games, they're not going to finish with the worst record. They're not going to get the top pick in the draft. There's no guarantee that even if they finish with the worst record, that they end up with the best player, because you might not win the lottery, and the best player, you go back to the past few years, it's not always been the top guy. And I mean, they're on pace to win about what Memphis won last year, if they keep going the way they're going, win 33 games, which is what Memphis won last year. Memphis ended up with the number 2 pick in the draft and got Ja Morant anyway. So like, Memphis didn't have to tank for things to work out for them. Talking to Rick Carlisle last night about the couple of years when the Mavericks were basically tanking. I mean, they weren't trying to win, and Carlisle kind of acknowledged that there were times when the Mavericks weren't really caring about winning at all. I mean, they were basically trying to finish with the worst record in the league, and they didn't. They finished with the 4th worst, and things worked out for them. Yeah. So my point is, like, I guess it's getting kind of convoluted, but by trying to lose every game the rest of the way, the Spurs improve their chances of securing a great player by a small percentage, if anything.
Part of that's because the other teams are already so bad. They're already like 7 games up or 8 games up on.
What confuses me about this topic that I'm being blamed for bringing up is, how would one even go about trying to lose all the games? Like, would you start Jakob at point guard? Would you, like, I don't even understand how that would work. And if the answer to that question is, well, you play all your young guys more, I don't know if that's at some point, I don't know if that's such a bad idea.
Right.
But the object wouldn't be to lose as many games as you could. It would be to, like, let's see what we have in some of these guys.
I think
that might be the last 2 weeks of the season.
The
not
problem
the last
with
25
all
games.
of these conversations and every facet of it is that it tends to be boiled down into either or, black-white terms. Whereas even if you just take a small slice of this, what Jeff just said about whether you should play young players more, there's so many different dimensions to that. First of all, does playing young players more mean that you're going to lose more? That's some people would argue that playing young players more might actually, I mean, on the one hand, playing Luka Doncic over LaMarcus Aldridge, you're probably going to lose more. But there are all kinds of little substitutions you can make. Play Bryn Forbes less, play Marco Bellinelli less, play Keldon Johnson more. That might actually make your team a little better. Okay, so then that flies in the face of tanking.
Right.
The other thing is there tends to be this idea that young players have to get NBA minutes early in their career to improve, and that's not necessarily true either. Because, okay, let's say the Spurs admit that they're not going to make the playoffs, that's not a realistic situation this year, and they're trying to do what's best for next year's team. Maybe what's best for next year's team is not to play Luka 40 minutes a night, because that will hinder his development, and they've had this run of using the G League to improve those players. So just because I realize this gets confusing, but just because you've decided you're probably not going to make the playoffs does not mean that you'd have these wholesale changes to minutes and playing time and rotation and all those types of things. I think there's different factors that go into all these discussions.
I think the plan is for, if you're talking about Luka, who was in uniform last night for the first time, just because they needed 13 guys in uniform. If you're talking about him, I don't think there's a plan to play him this year. Like no matter how bad it gets, we're going to bring Luka up and give him a spot in the rotation. I don't think that's in the cards.
In terms of like 20 minutes a night playing him. Like you'll probably see him in some games, but
I think it's possible.
Yeah.
If it works out. Like last night, if that blowout had continued and they're down by 40 in the fourth quarter, then you probably see Luka Doncic in the game.
Right.
But it would be almost a matter of circumstance. They're going to be very protective about throwing him in there in situations that he maybe doesn't belong in quite yet.
Yeah. In broad strokes, when we talk about what is next and the rest of this season, which I think, Tom, there's 49 days left in the regular season. Do you happen to know offhand?
That's accurate.
Okay. Yes. Over the next 49 days, if the Spurs don't end up mounting this improbable run and making the playoffs, I think what you are likely to see if you tune into Spurs games, and by the way, lots of you are still tuning into Spurs games. The Spurs lead the NBA in local NBA and local TV ratings. If you tune in, I think you will see more young players play. I think you will see less of guys like Marco Bellinelli, who played last night basically because LaMarcus was out, and there's this trickle-down type of thing going on. But it's not going to be – there's not a switch that's flipped where you say now things are different because they're out of the race. I think DeMar continues to play. LaMarcus, when he's healthy again, continues to play. And they should. Like, you don't just bench guys because you're chasing – James Wiseman or LaMelo Ball. By the way, this is one of the
Worst
weakest drafts of the past decade, according to every talent evaluator out there. Like, this is the worst year to try to tank that you could come up with.
I think Osborne's like a borderline lottery pick in this one.
Right. I mean, yeah. So
I like how you just went along with that.
I mean, we don't know. I haven't seen the scouting report. The point is, like, I don't understand why people get so angry that the Spurs are trying to win games when they say that it's pointless. Why are you trying to win games? You're going to lose anyway. Well, if you're going to lose anyway, then they're doing exactly what you want.
They are losing anyway.
Right. So what's the harm?
I think
what is the harm?
People just want to see them lose with different players because they're just tired of watching the same players lose.
That's fair.
That's probably exactly the case. And really, in reality, if you're going to play LaMarcus and DeMar, then you need to play them so you can maybe show that they're still viable and someone will want them in the offseason.
Sure.
Well, yeah.
Because I don't think going forward that they really have a future here. But that's
an
entirely
interesting
different topic.
With those three guys, well, Rudy's under contract, but in LA too. But with the playoff hunt fading, there's all kind of things going through their minds.
Yeah,
they're thinking about their future now.
Yeah,
But I think that's the weight of it kind of hit DeMar quickly the last couple of games, or finally hit him.
I'm also curious with those three guys if the playoff hopes fade. Are you going to see like the best basketball of their season over the last
Yeah.
6 weeks are you going to see kind of a
To me, that's more
Nah.
that's more interesting than the young
Yeah.
guys. To me, just how they handle this, and
because it could go either way.
yeah.
One of our
And-
What
and
are
I
we,
know
what,
they'll
like, what are we doing this for? What are we?
But I know it goes without saying, but they're pros and they'll show up and do their jobs and do it well, probably.
one of our favorite pros in the locker room to deal with in terms of showing up and talking and being a nice guy and being an upstanding player who his teammates respect is Rudy Gay. He's not had a great year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's
Like if you want to distill why this, because they went into this season thinking we have the same team plus DeJounte. We've heard that so many times. They have the same team plus DeJounte. Why is it so much worse than last year?
Pop said that pretty early.
It's because there are a handful of guys that are just having worse years than they had last year, and Rudy Gay is kind of at the top of that list.
And you got to throw Derek in there too. The hopes were so high for him coming off that Denver series, and
It's Rudy and Bren, and I don't think DeJounte has made the leaps everyone kind of expected.
No.
Which I think there are also, I don't know. You don't want to give them excuses, but it's hard to come. It's hard to come back from an entire year of being off with an ACL and not really knowing what you're doing as a point guard anyway. But anyway, going back to Rudy Gay, if that's what you want to talk about, I mean that's what he's kind of near the top of that list of guys that just have had a worse year than they had last year. I mean, if you just look at the 3-point shooting from him, he shot a career high last year from 3-point range, first time over 40%, and he's back down to 31 this year. And
if you look month by month, I mean, guys get old.
It's getting worse.
Guys get old. That happens all the time. Just scoring totals or averages by month. November to December was lower than November. January was lower than December, and February's been. I think he's averaging like 6 points a game in the whole month.
Last year, every other week or so, he would pop off for a 20-point game.
Yeah.
And can you imagine him scoring 20 points in a game at all again?
Yeah,
Just
it
watching him
happens.
play.
Just like organizations get old, players get old, and I don't know what his next step is. That's interesting. Like Tom mentioned, thinking about the future of those veterans will be fascinating to watch. Yeah.
I mean, it says a lot. When I watch Rudy this year, the only time I really ever notice that he's on the court and doing anything is when he has to play center.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really the only thing he's contributed is to this team this year. And a positive aspect is he's been willing to play the 5 a little bit.
Well,
let them go small.
Of the 11, 12 guys who've gotten rotation minutes for your San Antonio Spurs this year, who would you say has exceeded preseason expectations? Patty Mills?
I mean, I think
Jakob, maybe?
Jakob.
yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe. He
I mean,
kinda is what he
I
is.
think DeMar's had a better year this year than he had last year.
You're probably right.
Yeah.
But I think everybody else has taken a step back or 2 steps back.
Yeah, that's kind of the distillation of this whole process here, this whole downfall of this team.
Kind of certain guys got old and slipped off, and the guys you expected to jump in and fill that gap didn't really do it.
Yeah.
And we were talking early in the season, before the season, the big story angle was the young guys coming to the fore, and that hasn't happened.
It's been rocky.
And Lonnie, you could say, well, he hasn't had regular minutes, but he's
been getting them lately.
Yeah. But has he blown us away? Yeah.
Well, I'm kind of supporting your point here.
Yeah.
The excuse
right.
the excuse of not getting regular minutes is sort of fading, and this is not a Lonnie Walker bash fest.
No,
here.
not at all.
Well, I will say in that Dallas game last night, because he's getting regular minutes, and last night he started because they had guys injured. Mm-hmm. At the beginning of the game, I was thinking this is not a good Lonnie Walker game, but by the end, he had kind of salvaged it.
Yeah.
He had contributed some things.
Yeah.
And when you get regular minutes, you can do that as opposed to, you had a bad first quarter, so you're done for the night.
Yeah, DeMar mentioned that last night. He's not worried about being pulled now. He can try to make up for things on both ends when he makes a mistake.
But he hasn't been a star, and I don't think I think the Spurs were reasonable and didn't expect him to be a star.
Boy,
this
but
year.
some
that would,
people
that would be
sure.
that would be what some people are saying.
There are some people who expect him
Well,
to
the beginning
be
of the big
going to Springfield.
There's that backup quarterback is the most popular guy dynamic going on. He wasn't playing, so everyone thought that they'd seen him in summer league, and people convinced themselves that he was this wonderkin that he's. It was almost unfair.
It's unfair. Yeah.
And I think those same people have jumped on to Keldon Johnson now.
Yeah, that's probably.
I mean, he scored 31 the other night in Austin.
Yeah.
Keldon.
Yeah.
Why is he not getting minutes?
You have to find your hope somewhere when you're watching this team.
That's kind of what it is.
Yeah. How long do you think this is? If this might be an unfair question to ask in the secure location, how long do you think this era of the Spurs lasts in terms of not competing for playoff spots?
I think it depends a lot on how fast they want to actually commit to rebuilding. Can you get any? Do you trade DeMar? Do you trade LaMarcus? Do you actually commit to rebuilding this thing? And then at that point, it really depends on, like you said earlier, where you fall in the draft, and do you get the right guy? Do you get Luka at 4? Do you get Steph Curry at like what was he drafted at 10, 11?
There are no Luka, no Steph Currys, no John Morant's in this draft.
Not in this draft.
Not in this draft.
But you're asking how long. This is going to be a multi-year process.
And that's why I said, do you
And
trade
if you're
DeMar
lucky,
and LaMarcus?
if you're lucky,
Well,
it's
you're probably not going to trade
years.
DeMar because DeMar's going to opt out. I think. I'm not
Well,
not trying to break news here.
You could do a sign and trade or something and get a second rounder maybe at best.
I don't know.
You'll get more money that way.
Of course, there's a huge question we haven't talked about is Pop's future and how that plays into the rebuild. That's a often asked question in Chicago.
Yeah.
A big topic.
I think that, it's been no secret that the running assumption, not only here, but just about everywhere, that this there's a good chance this might be his last year. But with the Olympics coming up.
With the Olympics coming up, and you're 71, and only 2 other coaches in NBA history have coached past age 71.
Right.
I mean, it's not breaking news to say the end is nigh.
Right.
He's a lot closer to the end of his career than the beginning.
Okay, so let's get into that.
Oh boy.
No, just this kind of touches on what we talked about earlier, is that there is a sentiment that because Popovich is sticking around, like he's hindering the development of the team, and I just don't. I don't buy that.
I don't think it's hindering, but I do think when he decides to step away, there's another approach that you.
Yeah.
Right. I think the only difference.
What am I trying to say?
The only difference to me is that with Popovich here this year, you went all in and tried to make the playoffs versus maybe trading those guys, trying to trade them at the trade deadline a little bit harder. And that's probably the only difference. And I don't think anyone would have even taken them. Maybe someone would have taken LaMarcus if you really decided to just dump it this year. But with Popovich, you never decide to dump it. And I think maybe you're talking half a season too late. Oh, well. After 22 years, who cares?
We talked about this last time. I'd buy that argument a lot more if there was a franchise-altering deal that they turned down, but no deal that they did for either LaMarcus or DeMar at the deadline. I mean, there was a chance they could have gotten like a late first and roster filler for one of those guys, and they've had a lot of late firsts over the years, and I don't know.
I mean, they turned one of those into Keldon Johnson. He just scored 31 in the G League.
That's a good point.
It's excellent point,
they could
Jeff.
get in. I mean, you know who would have liked to do that deal is Blake Ahearn.
Yeah.
'Cause he'd get a hell of a player next year with that 29th pick.
For our listeners out there, that is the G League coach of the Austin Spurs.
I assume if you're listening to this, you know that. Like, you're that nerdy. You think there's just what? I mean, like, besides like our parents, do you think there's like older folks listen to this that?
I think the dirty data suggests that the average age of our podcast listener is, it's the opposite of the bell curve. It is 12-year-olds and then down and then way up to 79-year-olds. So like 79-year-olds and 12-year-olds are huge Spurs Insider podcast listeners. I didn't know if you were aware of that.
I was not aware of that.
That seems very logical, though.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Makes sense.
And the 79-year-olds just don't know how to change the channel.
Right.
It's just stuck.
Which is why we get the long listens.
They were listening to Puro Politics and don't know how to get off.
Yes.
If that's the case, I'm going to make a shout out here to Janice in Kerrville,
Okay.
who's on that higher end,
Uh-huh.
a loyal reader of the Express News, and,
Uh-huh.
a big Spurs fan. So
What was finish this up,
And
just
we're grateful, Janice.
thank you, Janice,
Very
Thank you,
grateful.
Janice.
and all of
We
your
love you, Janice.
friends for having them tune in. Any tales from the road that you guys would like to share about the long rodeo road trip? People are fascinated by the rodeo road trip, or used to be.
Man, I barely remember that trip because like the first 6 games were so long ago.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember if there's anything.
Tom, how did that work out for you?
I had the pleasure of dining quite a bit with Mike Monroe,
Uh-huh.
which was very pleasurable.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, we had a good time.
Did you have to cut his food for him, or
And no, we went down memory lane quite a bit, but
and he got lost?
yeah, but it was pleasurable. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I don't remember my part. I mean, that started with like the Kobe Memorial things and
Yeah.
stuff.
The highlight of Chicago was the DeMar Carroll launch. Of
Oh,
his
that's right.
clothing,
Okay,
uh,
this
There we go.
is a good story to get into on the podcast because people wanted. Okay, I'll start with Tom because he talked to him at his designer unveiling.
It was at an upscale men's clothing store.
And you just happened to be there getting fitted.
right, exactly. Yes, and
Is that where you got that sweatshirt?
on the near north side of Chicago
Uh-huh.
on a very cold night.
And you had noticed this on Twitter that he was having this event, All-Star
Yes.
Weekend. You were there for the Express News,
Yes.
covering All-Star Weekend, and thought,
Yes.
hey, the listeners of the Spurs Insider podcast have been asking all year.
Janice wants to know about
Janice
DeMar
wants
Carroll.
to know what the heck is up with DeMar Carroll, who was
Yes.
one of the big signings of the offseason and never really played.
Yeah.
You thought, I'm going to go down to this event,
Right.
and I'm going to talk to DeMar Carroll about his designer line.
Yeah.
And you did.
And I did. I learned a lot about the clothing industry.
And then you also pressed him about what the heck was up with him. He was still a member of the Spurs at that time.
Yes. Yes.
And he told you what?
He said, I love Pop, great individual, but we just didn't gel basketball-wise.
Uh-huh.
And he said he didn't want to spend the rest of his career at the end of the bench. He had more to contribute.
How would you...
And that a buyout was in the works.
And the
More or
buyout did
less.
happen. He's
Yes.
now a member of the Houston Rockets. The Spurs bought him out. And it doesn't really help their salary cap situation much. I mean, they're still kind of on the hook for his two-year deal plus a partial third year.
Yeah, oh yeah, salary cap wise.
But I'll start with Tom because Tom talked to him. Clearly, this was a mistake in the offseason for the Spurs to have signed him because it just didn't work. At the time, it was lauded as this deal. He seemed like a great fit for the Spurs. He never really found his way into the rotation at all. What do you think went wrong, and who is kind of responsible for things going wrong?
Well, I'm not going to speak to them signing him. I don't
Uh-huh.
know what the error was there, but I think he's right. It just didn't gel with them. And what he's leaving left unspoken was his shortcomings as a player, maybe at this point in his career.
Uh-huh. What would you think those would be?
Defensive rotations, just picking up the scheme. I don't think he ever fully grasped it from what I could tell, and I think that was the disconnect between him and Pop. Pop just never gained trust in him.
And talking,
I mean, it's not like this mystery, like why is Pop being mean to this guy? I don't think that had anything to do with it. It was there was blame on DeMar's end that was left unsaid.
one part of this that I think is significant that some people might find interesting is Jeff and I were having this conversation a month or so ago. Often when these types of things happen where a team signs a player who doesn't end up playing much, that is because like the GM wanted him and the coach never really liked him and it just didn't work out. It was like a miscommunication between the front office and the coaching staff.
Right.
The reason that explanation doesn't really fly in San Antonio is because Pop has his hand in everything.
Yes.
And presumably, I mean, in almost every transaction this team makes, Pop okays it at the minimum. If not
almost.
everyone.
Yeah, and in a lot of situations, management, front office, owners
Right.
will say, yeah, you got to pay this guy. We're paying him X number of dollars.
right.
That's not going to happen
that
here.
didn't happen with the
Right.
Spurs.
Yeah.
And I feel very safe in saying that when the Spurs decided to sign DeMar Carroll last offseason, Greg Popovich was completely on board.
Sure.
So it's not like DeMar came in and Pop was against him from the beginning. Pop wanted him at one point. and then it just didn't work.
He didn't. I mean, the only explanation is he didn't end up being the player they thought they were signing.
Right.
And whose fault is that?
I think it's without all the information, it's tough to cast that blame. I think it is true that he came in out of shape to start the season. I mean, not like crazy fat, but I mean that he needed some conditioning work, which I think a lot of players do.
He had been dealing with injuries the
Right.
last couple of years. That was a thing that maybe played into. It's hard to say because we haven't seen him much with our own eyes. There was
Right.
a little bit in preseason. There's a little bit earlier in the season. He never looked physically right to me, but the
No.
sample sizes so far are so small
Mm-hmm.
that it's hard for me to really make that judgment. Have you guys watched him much in Houston? Like, how's he? He's playing there.
He's there.
I mean, they somehow play 8 wings at a time.
Right.
It's hard to tell with their scheme. He just
Yeah.
floats around the perimeter.
Pulling up his numbers, he's averaging 15 minutes a game and 4 points and about 4 rebounds, but he's only shooting 36%. So, but I mean, it's 4 of 11. So it's a very small sample in 3 games.
He probably fits more with those players around him than
Yeah.
he does with playing off of
Just-
LaMarcus Aldridge and
all I
DeMar
can
DeRozan.
all I can say is the Spurs' 2 biggest problems this season are a lack of 3-point shooting and poor defense.
Poor defense.
So if he could contribute, if they thought he could contribute in either of those areas, they would have played him.
Yeah. Well, it was a disappointment for the Spurs that the way that whole thing worked out in a series of them. And sorry, this edition of the podcast hasn't been more of a pick me up, make you feel good about the future of your franchise.
Well, let's
but-
do something. What can we do to help?
Well, we're winding it down. What do you want to do to end this on a positive note?
I'm the wrong person to ask about positive notes.
You just volunteered yourself, or you said we needed to do something.
Well,
and
yeah.
then you have no idea.
No, that's my MO.
It's been kind of interesting this week hearing DeJounte and Derek. I'm not going to say clamor, but they brought up their desire to play together, and that's kind of unique in the pop era to have
Yeah.
players.
One of them should learn to shoot 40% from 3, and
Yeah.
that would make that easier
Yeah.
to sell.
Yeah.
They're really trying to sell it, I think. I mean, not going out of their way, but when they're asked,
I mean,
they don't.
it seems to be the future backcourt. Like, eventually
Yeah.
those two are going to have to figure out a way to play together, I guess. I don't
Yeah.
know. What do I know?
Those two and
I'm just on a
Lonnie Walker
podcast.
probably could be the starting perimeter guys next year. And like
And
you just
then-
mentioned, one of them needs to start shooting
One of those
40%
three
from
would be nice,
three-point
yeah.
range. Anyway, there's still 49 days left in the season, Tom Worsborn. So there's time for more Spurs Insider podcasts here in the secure location. I'm not sure what Jeff will try to bring better topics at some point. Who am I kidding? He probably won't. But we will try to come up with better topics for some future episode. Until then, what's on the schedule there, Tom? You see ahead for your Spurs?
Yes, I see a game against Orlando
Uh-huh.
on Saturday, a game against Indiana at home on Monday, and then they hit the road: Charlotte, Brooklyn, and Cleveland.
So
Lots of wins in there.
lots of wins.
Here comes the turnaround. Hey, you forgot to tell everyone where they can get all the stuff from the Express News and whatnot, like the whole reason for this podcast.
Well, you can pick up the newspaper. You can subscribe to the Express News. You can go to expressnews.com and find all kinds of coverage from everybody about your San Antonio Spurs who are having a season for the ages. You can follow Jeff McDonald on Twitter
Please do.
and argue with him throughout the day. And what are the other things? Oh, the Spurs Nation newsletter.
There you go.
Subscribe to that. That comes in your inbox every day.
And this comes to like your mailbox at home, or what is it? What explain
Well,
the
there's
newsletter
two
to me.
options. You can sign up for that one or the email one, which most people do.
Can you really get one into your mailbox at home?
If you want to subscribe to a newsletter that sends you stuff to your house, just ask Jeff, and he will mail the letters.
It's
himself.
$100 a month, and I will mail it myself for
He
sure.
absolutely will
If you
do
pay
it.
me $100 a month, I will mail you a newsletter to your physical address.
How many-
I might even deliver it.
How many per month?
One.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's that option. Just ask him on Twitter to do that until the next time. Just keep your heads up out there. Things are going to be all right. There are worse things to worry about than your San Antonio Spurs.
Take care of yourself and each other, as Jerry Springer.
Is an
used to
election
say.
going on? I
There's
heard?
election, some coronavirus.
Let's not get into any of that stuff.
Lots of worse things. Like coronavirus.
We're going to, I guess, going to need a czar for the Spurs problems here at some point.
I'm afraid the
Need to be
coronavirus is
appointed.
going to win the Democratic primary
Anyway.
somehow.
just things are going to be okay out there in Spurs land. There's other things to worry about. Just look at the bright side, and
It's just sports.
Other things to enjoy.
Other things to enjoy.
Be positive.
Right. So take care of each other
Coffee, polar pops.
and keep it real.
Peace.